The
I can't
crystal
believe you would
glasses
do this to
clinked
me.
against the mahogany table
This is
as
unacceptable.
Ethan Lawson watched his wife Vanessa rise from her seat at the gala dinner. She was dressed in that emerald gown he had bought her 3 years ago when he still believed in their forever. The piano music faded to a whisper as she stepped toward the center of the room where everyone could see her. The crowd fell silent, sensing something monumental was about to unfold. Ethan felt his stomach tighten into an unbearable knot. He had no idea what was coming. Vanessa turned to face the entire ballroom, her eyes locked on his with a coldness he had never witnessed before in all their 7 years together. Her voice was sharp and deliberate, like a blade cutting through silk. "You fool," she pronounced, loudly and clearly. "I never loved you." Gasping sounds throughout the room. The words hung in the air like a poison cloud, suffocating everyone within earshot. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. His hands trembled as he gripped the edge of the table. The woman he had devoted his entire life to had just declared her indifference to him in front of 300 people. He stood up slowly, his legs moving like they belonged to someone else, but the words died in his throat. What could he possibly say? The room spun around him, and he saw nothing but contemptuous eyes and whispered conversations. He walked out of that ballroom with his head high, but inside his chest, his heart was shattering into 1,000 pieces. Behind him, he heard Vanessa laugh with someone new, a laugh he had never heard when she was with him. That laugh echoed in his mind for days afterward. Back at their penthouse apartment that night, Ethan locked himself in the study. He poured whiskey into a glass, but never brought it to his lips. Instead, he sat in darkness, unable to cry, unable to process the betrayal. He had given her everything, his time, his trust, his unconditional love, and she had repaid him with humiliation and lies. He made a silent vow in that darkness that night that he would never allow himself to be vulnerable again. He would build walls so high that no one could ever hurt him the way Vanessa had done. But as days turned into weeks, something unexpected began to happen. 3 months after the gala, Ethan had transformed completely. He woke at 5 in the morning every day and jogged through Central Park, his muscles growing stronger with each passing week. He had joined a photography club at the community center, something he had always dreamed about but never pursued because Vanessa had called it a waste of time. He made friends with Marcus, a kind accountant who became his closest confidant, and Brandon, a retired professor who taught him about art, literature, and philosophy. The old Ethan would never have allowed himself these friendships because Vanessa had always demanded all his attention. One evening, at a gallery opening in Brooklyn, Ethan walked in completely unaware that Vanessa would be there. She was standing near a painting of a stormy ocean, looking absolutely stunning in a black cocktail dress. But when she turned and saw him, her expression shifted from composed to startled. He was different. She could see it immediately. His posture was straighter, his skin glowed with health, and he carried himself with a quiet confidence that had never existed before. He wore a tailored charcoal suit and was discussing impressionist techniques with a beautiful woman named Rebecca. Vanessa felt something unfamiliar twist inside her chest. Was it jealousy? She watched as Ethan laughed genuinely, a sound so authentic and free that it made her realize she had never truly heard him laugh like that when they were together. Vanessa felt something unfamiliar twist inside her chest. Was it jealousy? She watched as Ethan laughed genuinely, a sound so authentic and free that it made her realize she had never truly heard him laugh like that when they were together. He had always laughed carefully around her, never fully unleashing his joy. She had trained him, unconsciously, to be smaller, to fit into her shadow. But now, he was blooming like a flower that had finally found sunlight. She tried to approach him, but he politely excused himself from Rebecca and walked toward the exit with Marcus. His eyes met Vanessa's for just a moment, and in that glance she saw something that terrified her. There was no anger, no bitterness, no longing, just a calm acceptance that he was moving forward without her. For the first time since the gala, Vanessa began to question her own choices. She had expected him to chase her, to beg for her forgiveness, to crumble under the weight of her rejection. But instead, he had risen. That night, Vanessa sat alone in her penthouse apartment, the same one she now occupied alone, and realized she had made a terrible mistake. She had destroyed someone who loved her genuinely, and he had responded by becoming the man she had always secretly wanted him to be. The irony was devastating.
6 months had passed, and Ethan was thriving in ways he never imagined possible. He had been promoted to senior creative director at his advertising firm, a position he had been too afraid to pursue when Vanessa constantly reminded him he wasn't good enough. His photography work was being displayed in several galleries, and he had developed a reputation as someone who saw the world with fresh, artistic eyes. His life had become rich with meaning and purpose that had nothing to do with impressing anyone else. Meanwhile, Vanessa found herself increasingly isolated. She had moved on to a new relationship with a wealthy businessman named Gregory, but there was no spark, no genuine connection. It was hollow and cold, much like her marriage to Ethan had been, except now she had no one to blame but herself. 6 months had passed, and Ethan was thriving in ways he never imagined possible. He had been promoted to senior creative director at his advertising firm, a position he had been too afraid to pursue when Vanessa constantly reminded him he wasn't good enough. His photography work was being displayed in several galleries, and he had developed a reputation as someone who saw the world with fresh, artistic eyes. His life had become rich with meaning and purpose that had nothing to do with impressing anyone else. Meanwhile, Vanessa found herself increasingly isolated. She had moved on to a new relationship with a wealthy businessman named Gregory, but there was no spark, no genuine connection. It was hollow and cold, much like her marriage to Ethan had been, except now she had no one to blame but herself. One rainy afternoon, Ethan was volunteering at a youth center, teaching photography to underprivileged kids, when Vanessa appeared in the doorway. He was kneeling beside a shy 13-year-old named Tommy, helping him adjust the camera lens. His patience and genuine interest in the boy's perspective was breathtaking. She saw him praise Tommy's composition with such warmth that the kid's eyes lit up like a Christmas tree. This was the Ethan she had never known, the version of himself he had always kept hidden beneath layers of doubt and need for her validation. Their eyes met across the room, and Ethan felt no surge of emotion, just a quiet recognition that this was a chapter of his past, not his future. He gave her a small, polite nod and returned his attention to his students. Vanessa stood there, feeling completely excluded from his world, like a ghost haunting a place she no longer belonged. She realized that all her cruelty at the gala, all her dismissal of his love, had been rooted in her own insecurities and selfishness. She had pushed away the one person who had loved her truly and completely. That evening, Vanessa made a decision that would change everything. She wrote him a letter, not to win him back, but to finally tell him the truth. She confessed that her public humiliation of him had been an act of self-sabotage, that she had been too afraid of his pure love to accept it. She admitted that watching him transform into this remarkable man had shown her everything she had lost through her own cruelty and pride. The letter sat on her desk for 3 days before she found the courage to send it.
The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in a cream-colored envelope with Vanessa's handwriting on the front. Ethan almost didn't open it, but something deep within him knew this moment had been coming. He sat on his apartment balcony overlooking the city as he carefully unfolded the pages. Her words poured out with raw honesty, unlike anything she had ever shared with him before. She wrote about her fear of being truly loved, about how his devotion had suffocated her because she didn't believe she deserved such pure affection. She described the moment at the gala as the cruelest thing she had ever done and admitted it had been rooted entirely in her own broken self-image. Reading her confession stirred something unexpected in Ethan. It wasn't anger or triumph or a desire for revenge. Instead, he felt a strange compassion for the woman who had hurt him so deeply. He understood now that Vanessa had been running from herself, just as he had been running from his own insecurities. They had both been imprisoned, but in different ways. He realized that forgiveness wasn't about pretending the past didn't happen. It was about releasing the pain it had caused him and moving forward as a healed version of himself. 3 days later, Ethan responded to her letter. He didn't ask for a second chance or declare that he still loved her. Instead, he thanked her for her honesty and told her that he had forgiven her, not for her sake, but for his own peace. He wrote that the person he had become was stronger because of a heartbreak she had caused him. He explained that love should never require someone to diminish themselves, and that he had learned this crucial lesson because of what they had endured together. He signed the letter with kindness, wishing her genuine happiness and authentic love. When Vanessa received his response, hands shaking as she read, she realized the magnitude of his growth. He had transformed, not into someone bitter, but into someone truly enlightened. He had taken their tragedy and alchemized it into wisdom. The letter made her cry harder than she had ever cried, sobbing uncontrollably because she finally understood what she had thrown away. Not just a man, but the opportunity to grow alongside someone who would have lifted her higher and higher.
Jason Whitman sat on the edge of the mahogany bed, staring at his phone for the 100th time that night. The illuminated screen read 11:47 p.m., and Madison still hadn't answered any of his calls. Her shift at the marketing firm ended at 5 o'clock, and she always texted him by 5:30, even when she went to the grocery store afterward. But tonight, there was nothing but silence and growing dread in his chest. He called her number again and heard it ring endlessly before going to voicemail. Her voice on the greeting sounded so warm, so full of life, and it made his stomach twist into knots. He stood up and walked to the window of their bedroom, looking out at the dark street below. The houses were all dark except for the occasional porch light, and the empty road mocked him with its quietness. Where could she be? Madison was reliable, methodical even, predictable in the way he loved. She wore her blonde hair in the same bun for work and always packed her lunch the night before. She wasn't the kind of woman to disappear without explanation. Yet here he was, alone in their beautiful home with nothing but questions and fear. Jason returned to his phone and scrolled through his messages, looking for any clue he might have missed. That morning had been normal, he thought. They had coffee together, and she seemed happy, maybe a little distant, but he assumed it was work stress. She had mentioned a difficult client, and he remembered hugging her before she left for the office. He kissed the top of her head and told her he'd pick up groceries on his way home. She smiled and said that would be wonderful, but something flashed across her face, something he couldn't quite identify at the time. Was it sadness? Perhaps resignation? His mind began playing terrible scenarios like unwanted movies. He imagined her car in a ditch on the highway, or worse, an accident at an intersection. He thought about calling the hospitals, but something held him back. What if she was simply upset with him? What if she needed space and he started a dramatic search that would only embarrass them both? He tried to remember their last real conversation, not just the mundane exchanges about dinner plans and household tasks. When was the last time they actually talked about their dreams, their fears, their deepest thoughts? Jason walked downstairs to the kitchen and turned on the lights. The house felt cavernous without her presence. Her coffee mug still sat in the sink from this morning, and he picked it up, feeling the ceramic grow cold under his fingers. He had taken her for granted, he realized. Now, in this moment of not knowing where she was, he understood how much her existence meant to him, how her laugh could turn his worst day into something bearable, how her presence made this house a home. The silence stretched around him like something alive and suffocating. He texted her again, simply saying, "I love you and I hope you're okay, but I need you to come home."